July 4th, 1776. The Continental Congress declared that the 13 American colonies would no longer be under Britain's rule and were to be free and independent from that rule. So this day obviously holds significance to the United States of America to this day as our venture into a constitutional republic began. And we celebrate it and appreciate it, and what this day in history means. But often, days can hold different meanings and significance depending on the memory or the one that experienced it. Last week, we discussed the Supreme Court and a general overview of how laws get passed in this nation. This week will be quite different and less rigid, hopefully. So,
you're starting off pretty rigid, bro.
So, perfect segue there. I'd like to take a quick second, though, to ask if you enjoy the show. We would appreciate your support, whether that be following the channel, subscribing, sharing with friends, or visiting chronic-curiosity.com store and supporting us by picking up a super comfy and curious t-shirt. Also, if you don't know what makes them so curious, well, that's the fun part. And if you don't know what makes them so comfy, that's easy. These shirts are literally the most comfortable shirts I've ever worn, hence why we use Bella Canvas shirts for our designs. Additionally, we're not actually getting paid to say that. We just want people, that support us to have nice things. And we love Bella Canvas shirts. So they're comfy, they're wonderful. Support the show. Appreciate it. So that being said, it was a 4th of July parade 15 years ago that started it all. At least, much of what has remained since then.
A long time ago.
It's a long time ago. 15
Mm-hmm.
years.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell the story, or do you want me to tell it?
Oh, well, I guess leading up to before the parade, there had been a couple of potential dates set for you and I to go out, and they may have been canceled by a certain party.
They were canceled.
They were canceled.
Not by me.
And then we kind of stopped talking for, I don't know, a month maybe, something like that.
Well, you can only ditch a guy so many times. Well, you should be able to only ditch a guy so many times.
That's true.
Because if he keeps coming back, you might have a stalker on your hands. But
that's true. And then I happened to be at the parade with my mom and my nephew and one of my girlfriends. And randomly got a text message.
I was so pissed.
Yeah, and I hadn't heard from you in 4 weeks, right?
Yeah. Oh, at least 4 weeks.
Yeah, so I was complete surprise and shock. You were being sarcastic, I believe.
Oh, I was trying to be nicely sarcastic because I was like, just in case. But I was ready to motherfuck you.
Yeah. We ended up being at the same place at the same time. You didn't get to motherfuck me.
You were too cute.
It was the boobs at the time.
No.
So I told you where I was at, and Lindsay and my mom and I are just waiting and waiting. And here you come. I'm like, oh, it's those two right over there. That's Fred, and that's his friend Joe. Your friend Joe was wearing a button-up, brightly colored Hawaiian shirt, and I just remember my mom going, please tell me it's not the one in the button-up Hawaiian shirt. And I said, it is not. She waited until you were 3 feet away and goes, wow, he's cute. And that was the first time we had actually talked in person.
Yeah. Well, I have a similar, I remember before, because obviously I talked to my friends that were there with me. and they were like, I was like, oh, she's with her mom and her friend or whatever. And they kind of asked me like, well, like, which one is it or whatever, and I was like, well, you'll know. And as soon as the Hawaiian shirt ridiculously wearing person was like, oh, yeah, totally realized which one it is.
Fred has a type.
No, you were just really cute.
I just happened to fit your type.
It would have been bad. It would have been like, oh no, bro, she's the ugly one. not that like the person I was with you was ugly by any means, but that would be it'd be sad.
So that was a Tuesday. And then we had our first date on Sunday, which would have been the 9th. Yeah.
July 9th.
Because I did see you at fireworks, however, Saturday night. And you called our good friend Doug by, what did you call him? Derek?
Ben.
Ben, you called him Ben. Yes.
I thought about that the other day.
Yes.
With everything coming up.
Yeah. Which, I mean, you probably hadn't seen him since graduation, but that had only been a year.
No, enough. Maybe it was. But his last name does start with a B, and it like, I realized, I thought about the other day, I was like, why did I call Doug Ben? Why did I do that? That sounds so ridiculous. And it kind of hit me because I think his last name and everything kind of, and I was so surprised that like I saw, like I was just caught off guard. And then but at that point in my life, I wasn't very good at being honest. At least on the spot.
Yeah, so what did you tell him?
I told him I was high as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew he'd believe that.
Yeah.
Because that was basically my whole high school experience.
Yeah, so I was then at Doug's house.
Yeah, I was not high as fuck.
2 weeks later, probably. And I had canceled the dates because I knew that you used to be high as fuck in high school. And I had just dealt with a relationship where there was some of that. And I may have been mouthy, but I was very naive, not experienced, and all of the things. So I just didn't want to deal with another guy who was just a fucking pothead. So
yeah. I wasn't high as fuck though.
He was no,
still, to this day.
but Doug tells me, I don't even remember. He said something. I don't know. Somehow I said something about, oh yeah, he doesn't smoke weed anymore. And he was like, yeah, he was high Saturday night. And I said, no, I saw him Saturday. And he goes, he called me Ben. And
I admit to that.
And I was like, okay. So I believed you. Wasn't sure if I should have.
I don't know why.
Probably wouldn't have been able to tell if you were high or not. That's how inexperienced I was with any of that. And my plan was to go on a date with you on Sunday just to make sure that there was nothing there. And then I was going to continue the horrible plan with the said boyfriend before, which was such a terrible idea.
But you liked me.
I did.
I don't know why.
I did. Honestly, I think I texted him like halfway through and was like, no, it's not happening.
Yeah.
I refused to tell him who I was going out with. He knew that I was.
Oh, okay.
And he knew that he knew you, but I didn't tell him who it was.
Mm.
And I was like, no, sorry. Probably made my mom so happy.
At the time.
At the time.
Yeah.
That's true.
Everybody has their struggles.
You did bring a lot of sarcasm and some abrasiveness to add to our already abrasiveness.
Which I don't know how that's even. I don't even know how that's surprising that you're saying that right now.
I think it's a different kind of abrasion.
Maybe that's what it was because, I mean, your brother is formally described himself as abrasive.
Oh, I have too, about myself and him.
You could be a bit abrasive.
Mm. But declare, so I was 17 and you were 19. So we were very young. I had just graduated high school.
Super young.
That, month and a half before. Yeah. And now the rest is kind of history.
15 years later.
Here we are.
Coming up on less than a week away from our very first date, officially.
Do you remember what movie we watched?
Oh, My memory's crap. I remember the supposed dream I had.
Oh, yeah.
But I do not remember. What movie was it?
I think it was Click.
Oh, okay.
I think it was.
I'll say I remember that movie.
I think it was.
I would never remember seeing that movie. It wasn't a bad movie.
No, it was fine.
It was a normal,
Yeah.
whatever.
I don't think I've watched it again
No.
since.
But it wasn't a bad movie, but I never would remember seeing. That makes sense because I would never remember seeing that movie had it not been for some kind of important thing that happened in my life.
I could be wrong. I could figure that out, but
that sounds about right.
Yeah, I think that's what we watched.
Yeah. So 15 years later, 19 and 17.
Almost half my life.
Almost half your life. You're getting old.
I know. Almost 33.
What do you think has been one of the most important, maybe not as important, important's that's a silly word, to take away from a relationship like that and through your life as a late teen and 20s and going through those stages of life, just in general?
The first thing that comes to mind is that 17 and 19 is super young. Like, really young. I think I was 19 when you proposed, which would have made you 21.
Mm-hmm.
And I had turned 21 a couple weeks before we got married. That is incredible. I look at Koa, who's 20. He's so fucking dumb. Like, not because he's uneducated. Okay, maybe he's also a little uneducated. But I mean, he's just a normal, like, 20-year-old, right? Like, he's doing what 20-year-old people should be doing.
Making mistakes.
Right. Figuring out life.
Figure it out.
Figure it out. Pitter patter. Get her done.
No, pitter patter, get at her. Come on, you're gonna say it right. Yeah.
So we were 20, 21, trying to figure out the things.
Dumb as the rest of them. And
dumb enough to think we could take on the world and get married and make it work. It's
so funny, isn't it? Isn't that like that's just the story of life. Like, how many times you heard, like, oh, young and dumb, and your parent, and like all the adults say, don't get married young, don't do this, you're not old enough. And when you're that age, it's like, oh, my parents are so dumb, these grown-ups are so dumb. And then you become a grown-up and you go, oh, I was so dumb.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
But at the same time,
I couldn't hear it. People told us that, and I couldn't. It's fine.
And any 19-year-old in love that would be listening to this wouldn't hear it either.
Mm-hmm. Which is fine.
But guess what? You're going to have some heartache. You're going to have some troubles.
And it can definitely work.
It can.
It definitely can work. There's just, I think, from 17 to minimum 25. They're huge growing years.
Don't make any commitments. Years. Don't make any big commitments.
Yeah. And people do it and it works and it's great.
But
and I don't want to sound like that I'm anti getting married. Like, I'm not super thrilled that the government is somehow weirdly the threesome in this, but it is what it is.
They don't pull their weight, I can tell you that.
Yeah, they do not. I don't know the last time they did
around
the dishes.
the house or sexually.
Yeah. Step it up.
Yeah.
But it really is. And it's not that, like, having a relationship held me back from anything. It's just that being that committed it's a lot.
You don't know what you're getting into.
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing, but I think to make a relationship work, you have to be whole. We've talked about that.
Right.
Both people have to be whole, and then you come together not to fill any missing gaps, but to just make the other person's already whole life better. I don't know about you, but that was not whole for me till I was past 25. Maybe people find it sooner. I know people in their 40s, they haven't found it. You know, we're all different, right? But and if you have a partner who's willing to fill themselves while allowing you to fill yourself, it can definitely work.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not usually the case, right? So I just think you didn't ask for advice, but my first thought is it was so young.
No.
Obviously, I wouldn't change it. But
you can't change it now.
No. But if, I've told Kyrie, like, no, you're not getting married. You can get married, but not that young.
I mean, that's still left to be determined. But I think maybe an important piece of this is, we've had podcasts on because this will be a curiosity with the course one, naturally. But we've had podcasts where we've talked about, whether just a lot of different things in relationships and with people and normal people and like intimate relationships and all those different things. We've had guests on that like comment on our relationship together, and we've had friends and family, people that have commented on our relationship, and people don't realize most people don't realize what goes on, like kind of behind the curtain, as it were. We talk about that we've been together for 15 years, kind of ish. So it's probably more like 14.25 if you add it all up, roughly. I don't know. I'm a numbers guy, but I don't keep track of
it's like 14.55.
So
it depends on how you're counting it. We were not married for like 1.5 of those 15 years, right in the middle.
Yeah.
So surprise.
I think that's kind of what this is. The core of this is you can have relationship with people and you have this bond, and we talk about a lot on the normal podcast where it's people see something and it's not always exactly what it is. That's what it is now. Whether it be, I think a lot of people could even look at like the Bearded Butchers who we just had on. They're like, people see this, like they have this fantastic store. They have almost 1 million YouTube subscribers, and they're probably making decent money, and they're doing these things, and they have all this stuff, and it just looks like, oh, like these guys just have it all, especially for some just good old boys from a farm country kind of county in Ohio. But unless you listen to their story, you go, oh, you stopped going to school in 5th grade and you did this and this and this. And it's like, to understand people's backstories, like we often, as people just in general, judge each other on the surface and what they have or what you have or what you see. But going back to, people have looked at us and like, oh, I wish I could have a relationship like your guys's, or I wish my wife was that awesome as yours. I don't know how many times I've been told that, like, I wish my wife was that awesome. I wish my wife let me did this, or I wish my wife was that cool. Or like, what? You call your wife bro? Like, what the fuck's that? I'm like, yeah, because we're friends. Like, where that's, and that, like, it just baffles people. But then they also don't realize that, like you just said, kind of in the middle there. Well, I feel like we're maybe, I don't know, I'm not very good at my timelines. You know this. I feel like we're beyond the midpoint now from.
Yeah.
We were split up for 1.5 years. We
were split up for 6 months.
Well, 6 months.
But we actually dissolved the marriage and did not get.
Yes. Sorry. Correction on the terminology. We were split up for over half a year, but we were technically not married. We had gotten married when we were young.
21 and 23.
Don't do it. We had our first child, our only child.
2 years later.
2 years later. And then a few years after that, we got a dissolution.
Mm-hmm.
And we split up. And we lived, our time apart. And I think it was, I think I could say as a key factor. We can kind of touch on some of these things, but I think one of the most important things that I've had those conversations with people is, we always,
I need a snack.
you'll always need a snack, but we always made it like about, hey, we brought a life into this world. We need to take care of that life first and foremost. Like, we will both be there and do the things we need to do. And I've kind of talked about it briefly throughout a handful of podcasts, but like one of the catalysts to this whole situation was me just realizing my brain was in shambles and I needed to figure out my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what that meant, and we just kind of, things happened as they happened.
It happened surprisingly and quickly. I think it was a complete shock. It was to me.
It was to me as well.
Yes.
Honestly.
And it just happened.
I was in pain for a long time, and
I was aware of.
Right. Absolutely.
I knew that there was a definite wall there.
Yeah. And I didn't let you through it. So
no,
both of us,
I just kept, I could see little glimmers of hope right through that wall. And I knew a lot. You had told me things that I'm pretty sure you had never told anybody else. Mm-hmm. And it just made me love you more. And I mean, you were good to me. Like, you were nice to me, and you were a lot nicer to me than you were to everybody else around you. So I felt lucky, even though
I was still treating you like crap.
Yeah, and not in like a
yeah, I use that very strongly because that's the way I felt.
Right.
Now, looking back on it, like, obviously.
Comparing that to now, yes. But I could see like glimmers through that wall, and I just kept hoping that one day you would bring it down. And I was probably the typical nagging wife, like desperate to help you bring that wall down, like for both of our sake, right? And I think it was just difficult because it just wasn't happening. And then I think once you finally realized, like, my shit's super fucked up and I'm not happy. I remember you saying the words like, I don't know if I love you. The only love I feel right now is when I look at our daughter. I don't love myself. I don't look at my mom with love. Like, I don't know if I love you. And you'd been telling me you loved me up until literally that day. I think that you literally that day.
You did ask me, to be fair.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, literally like woke up, went to bed, normal, woke up the next day. You had said some things. I tried to be supportive. You did not want my support. I pried. I was like, do you love me? And you were like, I don't know.
I didn't know anything.
Yeah, you didn't. And I think that it just broke from there. Like
absolutely.
And
naturally and rightfully so, it makes sense.
Yeah. So it completely took me off guard.
Mm-hmm.
You not wanting my support didn't take me off guard, and that should have been a red flag of sorts. But within 3 hours, it was, I don't know. And I remember asking, like, when did you realize you didn't know? Like, how long has this been happening? And you're like, just now. And I think at that point, I finally was like done being on the back burner or just waiting to be I don't want to say priority, but like a priority. I was done chasing, like I felt like a dog,
right?
Like following their owner, right? And I was done. So I stayed that night, and then the next day it was my day off anyway. I moved in with my mom and dad. Yeah. And it happened very quickly.
Yeah, and likewise for myself, I snapped. Mm-hmm. Like I don't want to say like snap, like what. It feels weird for me to say this because like I feel like I'm like trying to hide something that's not hideable. Like I snapped. I didn't like. I was never like abusive, or like
No,
even
never.
verbally. But I was.
No.
I guess in a sense I was abusive in the fact that I was completely shut off
Mm-hmm.
from the real person who I was, and at the same time,
You gave just enough to keep me along, and I don't
Yeah.
think that was intentional.
no, it wasn't.
It was just enough.
I was shut off to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I realized. Where I realized, like, I never even fully, did any type of self-analyzation.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, oh,
Well, and you didn't have.
yeah, I didn't have any experience or even help to do that. So it was just I was just shut off and from everybody. And I remember we had multiple discussions where it's I was so shut off that in my mind I was trying to I didn't even realize it. I was trying to be what everybody wanted me to be. But when you are trying to be something different for everybody, that means you
Aren't anything for
yeah,
anybody.
you aren't anything for anybody. Yeah, exactly. And if nothing else, like, you're not great for anybody. So, like, and that's exactly what it was. And I just realized it was like I snapped. In my mind, it was like, oh, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. So that's kind of what was a catalyst to all that. Fast forwarding through the 6 months from there and the time through all of that, I think I don't know why it's always struck me, but I remember, I worked on my shit and I started figuring myself out a little bit. It takes time. Like, I had a conversation recently with somebody that was kind of going through a similar situation, and they asked me, like, well, how did you do it? Because after they kind of have seen what we were, who we are now, like, and the things that I'm saying now and how we live now, it's like, well, how did you figure that out? How did you do it? I was like, well, it's a lot of hard work. That's it. Whether it's a relationship with somebody or it's fixing something that you've discovered that's bad about yourself, like, it's just a lot of hard work.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't turn around. You can't go back. Like, you have to keep moving forward. And when I realized that's what I had to do, it was like, okay, we have to move forward. I have to grow. I have to do this. But there's some key things in my life that I want to keep, as protected, and I want to focus on as much as I can, which we talked about our daughter. But I remember one key point that I will never forget is when I finally felt enough self-confidence to tell you I would really like to, start to see what we could do. Like, maybe we could start talking and hang out. But I remember having the self-confidence and the self-worth enough to tell you, you may not like me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because I realize I have to be who I am, whether it's bad or it's good. But, like, you can't go through life pretending to be something you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you do that, it's miserable for yourself. And then guess what? Eventually, everyone around you is going to hate you because slowly they're going to realize that you're just faking it. And
I remember being two things. I remember sitting with that for a while and trying to remember. Obviously, when you think back at your own memories, it's skewed, right, to your own thought process. Yeah. Like, what kind of vibe was I putting out that I wanted you to be, right? Like, who did you think you had to be for me? Because you did a lot of this self-realization, obviously, on your own.
Right.
I helped a tiny bit, but I didn't know where you were at.
Mm-hmm.
I could just see a change. The first 2 months was literally a dumpster fire for all parties involved. And then after that, it just started gradually. Okay. I realized, figure your life out, basically.
Figure it out.
Pitter patter. You were doing the same. And so that was a thought process. Like, how did I hurt him, basically? Like,
Mm-hmm.
who did he think he had to be for me? And then two parts of the next one was, okay, how can I make sure that, first of all, he's right. I may literally not love this person at all. But what can I do to make sure that he is actually being who he's supposed to be? Like, that he has room and safety to do that. Because I think that is so important.
Mhm.
And as much as I wanted to do that before, I definitely went about it a different way.
Right.
Because I was smarter about it. And you like talked about it. So I knew to be protective for you, if that makes sense.
Well, I think that's a good point too, is, we often look at others and we, just in general, we often try to be somebody or be a certain way for this person that we think they need.
Mm-hmm.
And that might not be what that person needs at all. But at the same time, if that person is not being honest and telling you what they need, or being honest with themselves to understand what they need, and then telling their loved ones, hey, this is who I am, this is what I need,
Mm-hmm.
so it's
And that's for everything.
everything.
I found out my dad had cancer. I came home, went into the bedroom, cried, right?
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't even get it out. I'm pretty sure you knew
Mm-hmm.
without me even saying the words, because we were waiting for the results. And after you gave me all the, hugs, and you just held me or whatever, you said, what do you need from me?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't know. And you said, you need to tell me, even if it changes every day, right? Like, I need to know what you need from me. And at the time, I just wanted you to, let's just treat this like normal, right? Like, I just need you.
Right.
I don't want you to baby me. I don't want put in a bubble. It's going to be a long time. 3 months later, we're still, obviously it's cancer. It doesn't just go away.
Right.
But I think that, and there were days where I just needed a lot more than that. But you would have no idea how to take care of me or how to support me if you didn't just ask those words, right? You can hold someone and say, it'll be fine and I love you. That doesn't help,
Right.
right? It doesn't help. Nobody wants to hear it's going to be fine.
Right. The holding might be great. But
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
So I wouldn't even have asked you.
Right.
Or I wouldn't even have told you like what I needed, but you asked, right? So I think that can, if you don't tell people what you expect, or not even expect, what you need or what would be helpful or what you're going through, or however, people don't know how to help, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. I think it goes back to that, don't get married young. You're too young, and listening to the old people. Don't get married young. And you think, oh, you're old. You don't know what you're talking about, which is the most ridiculous thing ever. But, I remember years, it's always, what's the key to a successful marriage or relationship? It's communication, communication, communication. And you always hear that, and all the cliches of communication, relationship, and, but it's just like, it's just like, it falls on deaf ears. Particularly the people that are having problems in relationships. And, obviously, I think I can speak for both of us that we don't profess to be, expert relationship people.
no, we have literally been married twice to the same person. So
the other day, someone was.
Our experience is that we have fucked it up as bad as it can be.
The other day, literally, someone said something about getting married twice or something like that, and I just said, been there, done that. And they looked at me because they literally had no idea, because I'm sure in their head they're like, wait a minute, you've been with this same woman for a really, really long time. How in the hell, you're not that old. How, I didn't finish it. I just left it at that, just to let them question. But that's but it goes back to, it's communication, and it's whether it be business or, just normal day life, but relationships, it's just, how can you expect to live with somebody or have a relationship with somebody if you don't truly communicate? And I just see it happen so often where people they're communicating in a way that they think the other person wants them to communicate through.
Mhm.
And they're saying things that they think the other person wants them to communicate to. And granted, everybody, like we've talked about, like receives certain things and certain actions in certain ways. Like you said, like maybe you need the hug and it's going to be okay. Or maybe that's the absolute worst thing to do at that time. But you don't know until you communicate those things.
Mhm.
And especially in a relationship, like we found that just being able to communicate those things is the most important factor and the biggest thing that I've seen, that I've learned, and that I've learned it from you, is the room that you have for acceptance and the ability to receive communication or feelings or anything that maybe it's not what you want, but it's allowing the other person to feel, allowing the other person to say or do things, and not, for lack of a better term, not taking it personally, and giving that other person the room to be them. I've learned that from you. I don't know if I don't know if you ever like realized that fully or even like tried to.
I didn't, because you're good at that. I didn't. I just kind of thought that just came along with you growing and, maturing and being a different person. But that was something that I tried really hard at. Like, that didn't just come naturally.
Right. No, I don't think it comes naturally for anybody.
It just, when we weren't together, you had specific things that you needed to work out, right?
Yeah.
They were very specific.
Yeah.
They were no surprise to me. You saying that it is what it is, I believed you, but it wasn't what it is. You hadn't dealt with things. I thought I was fine, right? He done fucked this shit up, It took sitting with myself. Actually, it took you being brutally honest with some things that I definitely needed to hear. So I knew what stuff to work out for me, right? And that was one of them. I wasn't super accepting, I don't think. I mean, I think I was, but I wasn't like, I didn't super love some things, right? And so I thought that if I could control that, then I felt safer and I felt like our relationship was safer. And so when we were like, okay, let's see where this is at, that was something that I had really worked on or wanted to work on. And I just remember very important conversations in that very first redating that was super important, at least important to me, that left a massive impression that you were also okay with, because you said you might not like me, and I said, great, because you might not like me.
That was the whole point where I meant to tell that story.
Yeah.
That was when you said that back to me, it was okay, good.
Because
good.
That was not who I was before.
Right.
And
that was not who I was before.
For different reasons, right? Up until we started dating when I was 17, I was pretty independent. I was pretty, I was my dad's daughter.
In a way, but we were and
you were independent.
No, we were independent in very different ways.
Yes. But then when we started dating, and I'm not putting blame on anything, but started going to your church, and once a week the ladies would get together, right? And we would read Bible verses. And I loved Wednesday nights. Like, I thought it was great. We would learn like what it was to be a good wife, right?
Right.
And there were a lot of things that I was like, this is fucking bullshit. But then there were a lot of other things I was like, oh my God, like, he loves this place. Like, he loves these people. He is into this doctrine. Like, this is what he wants. And there were a lot, you know, and they basically, again, I'm not putting blame. It was just, I was young, I was naive. And so I quickly became a doormat.
Right.
Not that you expected a doormat, and not that I thought that I didn't think that that's what I was, but I was supposed to be this wife, right?
Right. And
I couldn't be a housewife because I had to go get a job.
Yeah. And I was supposed to be a drone.
Yeah. And so it wasn't until I was by myself and I was just like, how did I get here?
Right.
Like, not only was I ashamed that we were young and married, and now I'm going through a disillusion and I'm 24. Like, what? But I also was ashamed with who I had let you allow me to be, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there was a lot in life I didn't experience, right? By the time I graduated high school and we started dating, you were done partying. You didn't want anything to do with that.
I mean, it did.
Yeah, right.
I
you
just
did,
was
but you
suppressing it through because
yes,
that's what I thought was right.
Right, exactly. You were trying to
yeah.
be a different person for another group of people, and I didn't really need it. I knew it wasn't really safe because being a type 1 diabetic, it wasn't great. I'd had a few not so great experiences, so it was fine, you know. But there was a lot that I didn't ever experience or go through, and I think while you were working on you and I was figuring my stuff out, I got my fire back, basically, you know, to be independent and to disagree with you when I disagree with you, you know, to say, no, like, no, my voice matters too. And you never made me feel like it didn't. It just was like, he's the man of the house, right? That's, which is
so ridiculous.
So ridiculous.
So ridiculous.
But, I just, that you worked on specific things, I basically was like, I have to do me too, and you might not like me. I'm not just gonna sit here and I think that we have said in podcasts before, maybe it was the last one with Chad, that you love me more because I openly disagree with you. Yeah, like.
Well, and that's so it, you know, it comes back to the communication piece, and you know, having a relationship with somebody and communicating means communicating, and you know, if it kind of ties into, I've talked about this before too, where I spent the day today flying in a helicopter doing some things, and when you're in aviation or you are communicating with somebody that is not right in front of you, you can't see their social cues, you can't you can't understand, you can't be like, whoa, that didn't make any sense at all, like what? So, and this is something that we lose, like we talk about a lot over social media and text messaging and different things, but when you're in a situation that it is direly important, you know, flying a helicopter or a plane around when there's other things in the sky and different things, or when there's something very, you know, dangerous and specific that needs to be done, and you can only communicate through voice. There's, you know, this thing called, you know, three-way communication, where it's somebody will say, hey, I'm going to do A, B, and C, or I need A, B, and C. And the person on the other end will say, okay, I understand you need C, D, and B. And they go, no. I said, I need A, B, and C. And they go, okay, I understand that you need A, B, and C. And the person that originally goes, yes, I need A, B, and C. And you don't really realize how that communication breaks down so easily. And going back to what you said, how we've talked about it, that the more that we communicate and the more that we get to know each other through these years, the more we disagree.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, we talked about that with Chad. It was the more we communicate, the more we love each other, the more we disagree. And the more we disagree, the more I find about you to love you, because we're able to disagree. It goes back to, leaving that openness to somebody to say, okay, I want to accept you for who you are. Well, if you say that, guess what? You got to mean it, because if that person wants to give you who they are, then you have to accept it. If you don't,
stipulations. But I'm only going to love you for the.
Yeah.
You have to fit in this box, though. The rest of this, I don't.
Then how can you expect that person to accept you?
Right.
And you realize that, like, accepting each other for each other's, you don't have to like each other's flaws. And guess what? If, especially in a relationship, like, if somebody does some really stupid shit, then, like, that's not what we're talking about.
No.
But
like, we agree on the
core essentials.
Yeah, like we have
relationship.
Relationship. Not goals. What word am I thinking of? Not expectations. Like staples.
Pillars
to our relationship that we agree on. And you can't make everything important, right? So we have pillars, and we've talked about it before, that are important to us. Yeah, right. We agree on those, and those are what's important.
Right.
All the rest is just, if you don't disagree with your partner, someone's lying.
Yeah.
And it's just
yes.
It's
whether it's for good or bad or whatever it is, someone's lying.
Yeah. Someone's fucking lying.
And everything kind of comes back to those pillars, because if something's tied to one of those pillars, and hey, this, you have to, and it all goes back to communication and talking and finding out, like, all right, what do you think about this? Well, this is what I think about this. What do you think about that? Well, this is what I think about that. And then the more and more you do that, the more and more you sprawl out, and the more and more you kind of spiderweb out from those topics.
Mm-hmm. And everyone's pillars are different. Everyone's, like, relationship pillars are completely different.
Absolutely.
I have pillars that I'm sure my friends are like, no, that's not at all as important.
But it's understanding
that's great. But for us, this is what is important. Like, this is what we put our most time and energy into to make us work the best that we can.
Right. And when you find something outside of one of those pillars, you have to be, and this is where it gets tricky, you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be honest with the other person to say, ooh, this is kind of tied in a way to one of these pillars. And it's that honesty communication, or it's that honest, like, with yourself, of going, I hate, I maybe hate's a strong word, but that whole, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Well, in some situations, that may be right. But in a situation that is a relationship, a personal relationship with somebody, it's always wrong. Always.
I can agree with that. Yeah.
Sometimes if you're at work and the rules say certain things, or there's some certain things with a corporation or this, that, whatever. Yeah, I get it. Sometimes asking for forgiveness is better than permission, because you might be able to get a job done better, or you might be able to, get this client, signed up, whatever it is. Like, you might be able to get some more production out of something. But when it comes to a personal relationship with from individual to individual human being, asking for forgiveness is always worse than asking for permission. That being said, you shouldn't have to ask permission for everything. Because if it's like, hey, I want to go out and watch the like sorry ladies, if your husband or your man has to not saying all
Did
the
you say
time.
mate?
I said man. Ladies, man,
Mate.
woman, man, mate, person,
Partner.
partner. I mean, we call each other partner all the time.
Yeah.
So whoever it is, if your significant other has to ask you every single time, as long as it's not excessive, because there's, this is a whole sliding scale. But if it's like every once in a while, they're like, hey, would it be okay if I went with my friend and watched the football game at BW Threes? Like, if you have to do that, don't do that. Obviously, now if you're going out 3, 4, 5, 6 nights a week, well, maybe you got a problem. Like,
Right.
Because whatever. But if it's like an occasional thing where you have to like cower, is that a word? There's a word in there.
We needed Jamie to look it up.
Yeah. Either way, but if you have to like beg your significant other to do something occasionally, they shouldn't be your significant other.
Or you don't ask because you just know that it's going to be a shutdown.
That's what I'm saying. If you just don't ask, guess what? You shouldn't be with them.
Right. And it's different.
Right. It's different for everybody, but that's...
And we've evolved extremely
Absolutely
with this, right? And I will go as far as, and maybe for some people this is like, that is not attractive. I don't like that at all. But if there's a situation that's coming up, like, hey, I'm okay with this, this, and this, but like, you're going with this person and I know this person and their tendencies.
It's a little sketch.
I'm not okay with this.
Right.
So then it's not, and you've done the same, you know, then it's not, okay, shit. Are they okay with this? Are they not? This isn't,
You feel like you have to try to hide something, but it's like, I'm not doing anything wrong, but I have to, if you have to try to hide something, guess what? You're hiding.
Yeah, there hasn't been some, and, maybe that's like not attractive that, oh, my wife had to tell me like she's not okay with this. But if it's something that I'm not okay with, I'd rather just get it out there. And then it's not something that you're like, oh, shit. And I don't even know if we've ever been in that situation, but
those are very broad.
There have been, but there have been times where I don't even know. Trying to think of. Well, I've went out with my girlfriends, and we were like, all right, well, go get some free drinks, show your boobs a little bit, it'll be a little bit cheaper for you. And like, you're joking, but also like, we both know where a hard line is, right?
Right.
Like,
well, it's because we've had those communications.
Exactly. We were just talking to someone who ended up getting a cabana at a nightclub over the weekend.
Yeah.
And filled it with females, and one of their significant others showed up not happy. And I actually was thinking about that, and I was like, okay, where would the line be for me? Fred's in a cabana drinking with girls, women, because you're almost 35.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be upset. Fred's dancing with a female. Wouldn't be upset. Someone's on his lap.
It's a little intimate.
It's a little bit. Their ass is in his hands. He's an ass man. Probably not going to be thrilled. Right? I think Dry humping and making out on the dance floor. It's a hard no for me.
Yeah.
But there are people. I know I have a girlfriend that all of the above would have been perfectly fine.
Right.
And I love that for them.
Yeah, and there's some people
and there are people like, you're not fucking going out.
Even being at a place where there is people of the opposite sex is like,
yeah. And I'm not saying there's any, if that's how those.
But you both have to accept that.
Yeah, and if that, that's fine. I'm not saying that
absolutely.
That's not okay.
Yeah.
But we know that because we've talked about it, right? And I was a lot more jealous when I was younger than I am now.
Right.
And you're hotter now than you were then. But I'm super confident in me and in us compared to years ago.
Right. So, I think that also ties into, in a relationship, at least what we found is, you mentioned it earlier, the desperate versus encouraging. You know, when you are encouraging of somebody, at least this, I've found this, you know, extremely outweighs being desperate for somebody. You know, encouraging somebody to be who they are and not desperate for that person to be who you want them to be. And the more and more you do that, guess what? If that person's a good person, if that person loves you and wants the same for you, then that only encourages them to be a better person and to be a better person for you. You know, you talked about the whole, you know, at a club thing you showed up. Like the fact, you know, if you were to show up, and this is obviously hypothetical.
Fred doesn't go to clubs.
Yeah, right. But that's the point. The fact that you would be okay, the more and more you're okay with me going out and having fun or going out to a place and, you know, getting drunk with my buddies or hanging out. And if you found me on the dance floor, as long as I wasn't doing anything super inappropriate, you wouldn't be super pissed at me. The fact that that's how you are makes me even less likely to go do that. Because I'm like, there's something about, I don't know what it is with our human nature or, you know, with our genes, but you see it in kids. The more and more you tell somebody not to do something, the more they're like, well, fuck you. I'll do whatever the fuck I want. And even if it's subconscious, you know what I mean? So the more and more it's like we encourage each other to be who we are. It's, you know, and this isn't going to be for everybody, obviously, but typically the more and more we end up kind of compromising, not in a bad way, ourselves to be who we want each other to be. It's this weird kind of anomaly that happens when you find someone that you know, enjoy being around and having a relationship with and love and all these different things. And that's what I always thought it was silly when people talked about their significant other, you know, husband, wife, whatever it is, being their best friend. I was like, well, lame. They can't be your best friend because they're like, you can't fuck your best friend because that'd be weird.
Unless you can, and then it's great.
But then you realize, like, the more and more you encourage somebody to be themselves, that's being a best friend. Just being like, look, you know, as long as you don't really fuck me over, as long as you don't really screw me, as long as you're not really a really jerk to me, then you get closer and closer to becoming best friends, and you understand each other and you appreciate each other. And then you go, oh, so the more and more you encourage each other as in a relationship, it kind of becomes like like the less and less I worry about you doing things that I would be upset with because you understand me, I understand you. And in turn, the less and less that person does things to upset you. Just because it's this weird, I think it is encapsulated perfectly by, if you love something, let it go. And I always thought that was ridiculous. I'm like, well, I get it. If you love something, then let it go do what it wants to do. But guess what? If it loves you back, then it's not going to go anywhere. And when you realize that,
putting a ring on a finger is not going to change that. No. And obviously,
rings don't plug holes.
No, obviously,
just saying.
I am pro-marriage. I'm so happy that I am married. Would maybe I have done it differently with like maybe a ceremony of type that didn't involve the government? Probably, possibly. I really like having your last name and Kyrie's last name, so it
just makes it easy.
It is what it is. And I like referring to you as my husband, but I also refer to you as my partner. But you know, you just hear these stories where, and I mean very specific personal stories of people that we know that put a ring on it or I'm out.
What kind of yeah?
Why would you want someone to give you why?
Right.
Like, I don't get it. And I am a controlling person. Like, not
Controlling. You like
control.
you
I
like your
like to be in
environment to
control
be
of things.
controlled.
Yes. I have
Yes.
to have many parts of my life super controlled to stay healthy, which it then tends to seep over
Right.
into other things. But there are many times where I have told you, like, I don't care if we got married twice. If you're done, fucking be done.
Right.
Like, I don't want you to be here unless you want to be here. That's it. Like, there's no
Right.
gray area to that. I want you here because you want to be here. I would never want you to be here because you felt like you had to be here. Like, that's not appealing to me. That is not romantic to me. If I had to somehow manipulate you or bribe you into putting a ring on my finger, like, I don't want it. I'm not always a deep person, but there's nothing more shallow to me than that. I don't want that at all. If that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. I totally get it. Well, it's like why it all goes back to why would you want something that you have to work for all the time? You know, we already have enough of that. I have to work for money. I have to work for, to pay the bills and to do all these things. I have to work to stay alive. I can't just, you have to eat. You got to do all these things. You have to work for everything in your life. That's kind of, in a way, like that's what's beautiful about loving somebody and being in, like, having a relationship or having a friend. It doesn't all have to be about love and butterflies and like,
It's just
when
definitely
yeah,
work, but
yeah, but
not,
when I say love, like it's not just like, oh, love and rom-coms and all this stupid ass bullshit. No, like it's friendship with people, whoever it is. But if I have to like require something of somebody, or if they have to require something of me, like I need a ring or I'm out, then fucking get out. Like if that's what you need to be with somebody, like why are you there to begin with? What's that ring mean? Like, you have to really question yourself. What's that ring really mean? Or, I remember there's at one point I talked to somebody years and years ago where it was something along the lines of like, I can't, oh, this is, it was about a ring. I thought it was a different example, but it was a price tag on a ring.
I remember that story.
It was, if this ring cost less than, I don't remember what it was, 5,000, 10,000, whatever it was, or it was smaller than a certain carat, then I'm not marrying you. It wasn't me, obviously. It was somebody I talked to. I'm like, bounce the fuck out, period. No questions asked, done. Like, because, so their entire relationship is based off of an arbitrary number of some fucking crushed and squeezed chunk of carbon that was pulled out of the ground. Get fucked.
Everyone is judging you right now because you can see this $13 silicone ring
That's so that you just
that I bought
decide to
myself
wear
because
that.
I wear it at the gym. I don't have my ring on, but no. Do you remember when we went to the mall? We were not engaged. I was probably 18,
I don't know.
and we were looking at watches, and the pretty little sales lady came over and was like, "Oh, are you looking for rings?" And you were like, "No," and I was like, "No." I said, "But," she goes, "Well, let me just show you."
I
like,
do remember.
Okay,
I vaguely
fine.
remember that.
And I told her that it was too,
Yes.
like I would be not impressed with him if he spent this much money on a ring. And she was like, "Oh, you need to marry this one, right?" You remember that?
Yeah.
She was like
Yeah.
appalled at first.
Yeah,
that
she was pissed off at you, but she was like,
Yeah.
you should probably marry this one.
Yeah. And it wasn't even that expensive. I thought it was expensive.
Yeah.
I do every now and then, send you a real pretty one. I was like, "Hey, when Bitcoin does real good and you don't have anything else to spend your money on, I kind of like this one."
Yeah.
Hoping you're screenshotting those and keeping them.
Well, they change throughout the year, so
They-
I don't know. I just figured
they do.
It's by the time I make a bunch of money, we'll figure it out.
But that's
yeah, I think it's really, at least for me, it's all gone back to acceptance of each other, the communication. And it's all so stupidly cliche, but I guess that's why. Maybe it's not cliche, but it's that stereotypical, you know, comments of how do you make a successful relationship. Well, maybe people have already figured out we're just not fucking listening.
Mhm.
You know, and
Well, and acceptance can come in a lot of different
a
ways,
lot of
right?
different
So
ways.
I was accepting of a new person that you were, but then I asked you, I didn't even ask you, it just was kind of a thing that I needed you to accept me with the issues and the holdup I still had with our separation, right? Like
Yeah,
it was hard.
it
It was
was.
hard. It
It
was hard
was.
for both of
It
us,
was
right?
really hard.
But you were so confident, not so confident, but you tried to be confident in who you were becoming.
Yeah,
And
I had to be.
and I loved that, right? I absolutely love it. You
That
basically
was literally one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire life.
right, and you basically said, "Listen, I am so sorry for everything," right?
Mm.
But I cannot keep being reminded of these things. I know they hurt you. I know that you are still in pain. I know that you deal with things differently. I I don't want to be this person. So I'm done. I need you to not basically remind me because I was still processing things and I'm a questions person. I would rather have the brutal truth, swallow it, and then I can be done with it, right? I don't have to think of the what ifs because if there's the what ifs, my mind is making it 10 times worse than what it probably is.
Right.
And I dealt with that for a long time.
Yeah.
And I know it was hard for you
Mm-hmm.
because it was a reminder of
The person I didn't want to be anymore.
exactly.
Yeah.
But you knew that I had to deal with it. However, and God, it would piss me off because you didn't ask questions. You were just kind of like, no,
I had to. Yeah.
who is this? Whoever you want to be, like, and you're still like that. And it drives me nuts sometimes.
I had to let it go
Yeah.
because that's what I needed.
But even like you never like show or speak jealousy, and that's great. But sometimes a woman's got to know that her man is just like a little bit like, jealous. I don't know why that would be appealing, but like
I do, just in different ways. You just don't see it.
yeah, you're very good at like so and you were very much like that then. And so here I am trying to work out all the shit and
Right.
but I needed you to tell me that, like, hey, I can't. I'm done. Like, I can't go back to this. Like, not through questions or not through stories or whatever. Like, I'm done. And it took a couple of years for me to finally be like, hey.
I mean, honestly, that was one of those things where quietly in the back of my head, I tried not to think about it, but it was one of those things where it was like, like if you're one of those people that you say like, I can't live in the past, I can't do this. But some people have to work through things like you talked about. And I knew that I understood that's how you were. But in the back of my head, it was always one of those things that was like, oh, like, I know I'm going to have to, I guess, in a sense, it catered to my self-deprecation in a little bit. Cause I was like, you know what? Like part of it was like, I deserve this. And whether or not I did or not at that point, it was in the back of my head, it was like, all right, I probably deserve some of this pain, this whatever. But at some point, I knew I was going to have to say, no more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. And I did have some, like, not so that I thought about often, but it was one of those things where it was like, you know what? Like, I may have to give her the second divorce if these things continue on. Like, it wasn't like at that point, and it wasn't even close, but every once in a while you get hit with that. If this goes on for another 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, like Because some people are like that. They never let go. They say they're going to let go. And then it's, you get into a fight with your friend or your significant other or whatever. And then it's like they bring something up from 20 years ago. Obviously we haven't been, but just examples. Like there's people that are like that they never let stuff go. And that's fine. If you will never let stuff go, that's fine. But the one thing you should let go is that person that you're not going to let something go. Like, you know what? I think through the main podcast, if people have listened to it and really truly listened to my perception on things, and that kind of in a sense everyone kind of deserves a chance, and we want to move forward, and we want to build these relationships with people, and that we want to talk to people, and kind of everybody deserves a chance. But there's sometimes in life that it's okay to write people off. A lot of times they're like, oh, you shouldn't write anybody off. That's or not evil, but like bad of you or whatever. Sometimes it's okay to write people off. But those are the people you should write off, is the people you're never going to forgive. Don't keep them trapped in your circle. Don't keep them hanging from a carrot thinking that, oh, well, I love you and I'm going to forgive you, but not quite yet. Well, how long does that go? And at some point, the person that's being dragged along by a carrot has to say, regardless of the bad things they've done, if they've came back from that, because people can do that. People can change. It's hard. It's difficult. A lot of people don't change, but people can change, and people can completely take a 180 from who they were and the things they did, whether it be, drug addiction, or, just being an overall just shitty person, or a liar, or a stealer, or whatever it is. Like, you can change. You have to give yourself the power to do that, and you actually have to do that. And if somebody is not forgiving you after you've done that, maybe it's your time to write them off. Now, granted, granted, like if it's like a month and you've been a shitty ass person for 15 years, they're going to need more than a month. They might need more than a year, maybe 2. But at some point, if you genuinely take the steps to change and you're consistent day in, day out, you might have to be the person to write somebody else off if they're not going to forgive you.
No, I agree with that. I think for me personally, it was because later on, a year plus, your answers to some things were completely different. So you were more confident with telling me the truth. You're like, yeah, I lied to you. When we talked about this, as soon as we got back together, I was scared. I lied. Okay. And I got over that a lot faster because I know I didn't believe you at the beginning.
Right.
So it had festered for a long time. And then it was finally a, hey. And you were like, yeah, this is, X, Y, Z. So I think that that's part of why there was.
Oh yeah.
It's, you can hold on to those things.
Absolutely.
But like, if you're not, like you said, if you're not going to allow someone to change, like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So you can encourage them and you can tell them, oh, you have this safe space to be whoever you are, but then you aren't letting these things go. And, sometimes there are things that cannot be forgiven.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're different for everybody. But don't, like you said, lead them on, right? Just be honest. Yeah. They're like, hey.
Yeah, if you're expecting somebody to be honest with you, then you have to be honest with them and not you can't being just as mean or deceiving or doing something wrong to somebody because they did something wrong to you. Guess what? We learned that in elementary school, and that's probably one of the best things you ever learned. 2 wrongs don't make a right. And I really, like, you were talking about some things that kind of hit me that, controlling a relationship doesn't make it safe.
It's never safe.
And just because it's safe doesn't make it good.
Mm-mm.
And it just hit me when you were talking about that. I had to jot it because it's just like, oh, like people have all these, some of the worst relationships are when people are controlling. And secondary to that, some of the worst relationships are when it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously a dangerous relationship in some regards is not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Some it's really nice. If it's a little, a little dangerous.
A
But
little chaos.
Yeah, a little chaos, yeah, as well. But I think it sounded, at least to me, it sounded really good. I don't know if it would, as I've been accused just recently, fit on the inside of a Dove chocolate wrapper. That in relationships, controlling doesn't mean safe, and safe doesn't mean good would necessarily fit there. But I think that's it's interesting to think about. But with that, we can wrap this up. But advice for new relationships and advice for struggling relationships.
So a little bit down the communication path, but also a side step is we have learned over the years to ask each other for grace.
Mm.
So an example of that would be, I take it personally if you are busy and like busy with work, you have a lot of things going on, you're at the dinner table, but you're not really at the dinner table. Like you are not here.
Mm.
I take that hard or personally, right? Like, what the hell? Like, So now you say, okay, my next 2 weeks are packed. I am stressed. I'm going to be stressed. It's not you. It's work. I need some grace. I need you to be here for 65% of the relationship because I can't give my half. And I'm great. I'm fine because I know.
Mm.
Same thing. I'll ask you, hey, I'm struggling with this thing. I need some grace, or, for whatever reason. And say, okay, I got it. Like, I got you. And you take over. You have to be able to be vulnerable enough to ask for that. And I think vulnerability is very difficult, especially if your vulnerability has been shoved back in your face, even if your partner didn't mean to. But without it, like, what's the point? So being able to ask for that and knowing that both people, there's no way that they can give 100% all the time. It's not possible. Everything in life ebbs and flows, right? So when your partner can only give 30%, you have to be willing to give the rest. You have to. And then when they come back stronger and they feel great, you're half in, right? And then when you can't, for whatever reason, give fully to the relationship, they can pick up the slack. And it's fine. Like, I think that has been really good for us. I don't necessarily hear that talked about, but like, it's very real. So just be vulnerable. Find somebody that you can be vulnerable with, that is safe for you. Like, there are certain things in relationships that are safe. Your vulnerability, right? Your honesty. Those things should be able to be safe and encouraged. And be willing to give each other grace, right? Like, I'm proud when you ask me for that you're like allowing me to give you that. like when you let me be the big spoon.
Because you're kind of small.
I know. But I really like being the big spoon sometimes. I feel like it's really nice to be the one holding you for a change, which is what I feel like when you can't show up fully. And I'm like, I got this. Like, I got you. I can take on the rest. Like, it may sound bad because I'm doing more work for this relationship, but it's like an honor, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's good advice, but
I think it all comes back to both people. You know, like you said, you don't have to equally put in as much work all the time, but on an average, you know, across time,
mhm,
it should be that's what they call a partnership together,
mhm,
working together, communicating together, and being able to balance the weight of that relationship. Because relationships are hard because you have to combine the goods, the bads, and the faults of two different people together into one, you know, thing, let alone adding children
mhm.
or other things into it.
Well, you brought up being friends, and I think that's super important. Obviously, you touched base on that, but I think the main seed that was planted when we weren't together, well, first of all, the main seed was that like we both were on the same board with Kyrie, right? Like there was we didn't need to disagree on anything because we both were mature and put her first. And there's not a whole lot of discrepancy when you're actually putting your child first, right? Like
If you're actually doing
if you're actually doing it, and there was not one time that I felt like we both weren't doing that. We had our disagreements, right? It was dumpster fire for a while, but not one time did we disagree on her. And that really was helpful for me. Like, but I think one of the main things was I finally realized like we were not getting back together. You were struggling, and I wanted you to be the best person that you could be. A, because I loved you, but I also just wanted you to be better, right? I wanted you to be a good person. And I wanted you to be a good person because Kyrie needed a good dad. And you were a great dad. I mean, she needed her dad to be happy and to work out his shit, right? And I just remember taking steps to help facilitate that. There was no gain in it for me. Like, I didn't think that it was going to help get us together. There was no,
right.
it was completely for you. And like, I wanted to be your friend. Like, it was a friendly thing to do, right? Like, I just wanted the best for you. And I think now your happiness makes me really happy. And I know when I'm happy, you're really happy. And it just is really nice that they overflow into each other, right? And then it's just this.
Well, that's what friends are, right?
Yeah, every day I want you to get up and do whatever's going to inspire you and make you happy. I want to encourage you to do that. Like this, right? Like this room right now, this podcast right now. This is the latest thing that makes you really happy. And I try to facilitate that the best that I can, right?
That's what friends do.
Yeah.
Friends make friends happy.
Yeah.
And you
No.
can't be, as much as we in this society, and I don't know, this is just obviously our opinion, but around the world, that societies don't put any weight on that marriage and a relationship between a male and a female, or a husband and husband, or whatever it is, a wife and wife, or whatever it is, like that marriage. Like, I think it's failed right off the bat. If you're not going to be friends, how are you going to be partners for life?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Happy 4th of July. Maybe you'll meet your other half. And 15 years later, here you are.
Here you are. Ready for 15 more.
Hopefully more.
Yeah.